At 2:13 a.m., the mountain moved like a dropped curtain, and Bellweather woke to find its only road swallowed by roaring mud. Rain kept punching the valley, power lines sagged like wet ropes, and ambulance headlights stopped cold at a wall of earth taller than a house. On the ridge above town, Nia stepped out of her night shift laundromat with detergent on her sleeves and saw isolation spreading faster than panic. Bellweather was not built for drama, just fishermen, orchard workers, and retirees who measured days by weather reports and broken appliances. But disasters do not care what a town thinks it is, and by dawn the grocery freezers were warming while insulin coolers ran thin. A nurse named Elena was stranded at the clinic across the slide, sheltering 6 patients and one gasping generator that coughed harder each hour. Cell service came in ragged bursts, enough to deliver bad news, not enough to organize anything clean, comforting, or official. Nia looked past the buried road and toward the laundromat lot, where mirrored delivery vans sat idle like forgotten tools waiting to be renamed. She remembered a hobbyist drone group from the next county struggling in storms because fog erased landmarks and darkness flattened everything dangerous. So she climbed the hill behind the laundromat, turned every van uphill, and lined them in a silver curve facing the broken valley. She switched on all the hazard lights, and the blinking amber reflections bounced through mist until the hillside pulsed like a rough-made lighthouse. It was not elegant, but emergency plans rarely begin elegant when minutes matter more than pride, permission, or polished expertise. Kids already sheltering in the laundromat began carrying extension cords, spare batteries, and buckets because nobody had time to say they were too young. The detergent bay became a relay lane, with soaked sneakers slapping tile while children passed water, flashlights, canned soup, and charging bricks hand to hand. Elderly fishermen from the creekside cabins studied the floodwater swallowing culverts and realized boats could not reach the clinic through that violent brown surge. Instead of surrendering to what they could not do, they started slicing old dryer belts into strips and weaving floating cages in the parking lot. The belts were tough, flexible, and ugly as storm eels, perfect for lashing medicine boxes and fuel cans so currents could not tear them apart. Meanwhile, a retired mechanic cracked open the laundromat's coin machines, not for theft, but for batteries, wire, and every useful scrap hidden inside ignored hardware. A school custodian mapped high ground on pizza boxes, marking church roofs, barn lofts, and gravel spurs where drones or helicopters could safely approach. The volunteer drone pilots arrived by tractor from a neighboring farm road, following Nia's flashing hill because the valley finally had a beacon. Their small aircraft rose into rain like mechanical dragonflies, cameras cutting through gray curtains to locate stranded homes, flooded sheds, and washed-out footbridges. Every screen in the laundromat glowed with moving maps and trembling hands, and ordinary people began making decisions with startling, disciplined clarity. One teenager, who usually repaired gaming consoles, repurposed signal boosters from old routers, stretching communication just far enough to steady the drone feed. A baker who knew every family by allergy and appetite turned inventory into a ration board, matching calories to need instead of handing out fear. Nia kept running between the hill and the machines, her hair plastered to her face, checking light angles as if she were tuning stars. She realized the van mirrors were not merely reflecting hazard flashes. They were creating layered markers that helped pilots judge depth in the rain. That small insight changed everything, because in a storm, distance lies, but repeated light patterns give the eye a structure to trust. The drone pilots used the mirrored path like breadcrumbs in the sky, orienting helicopters toward the clinic whenever cloudbursts erased the landscape again. Across the slide, Elena dragged cots away from leaking windows, rationed generator time by plugging in only what would keep lungs moving, and waited. She tied red sheets to the clinic railing, but wind shredded one and wrapped another around a birch tree like a torn surrender flag. When a drone finally hovered above the clinic roof, dropping a blinking locator into her hands, exhausted patients started crying with the relief of being found. Back at the laundromat, the fishermen launched their floating belt cages into side channels, guiding fuel, antibiotics, and sealed batteries around debris-choked currents. They used pike poles and old crab nets to rescue the cages when they snagged, then sent them back out with more supplies. Bellweather's pastor opened the fellowship hall for sleeping families, but he spent most of the day hauling mud with two tattooed roofers he had barely known. The town's quiet accountant became the de facto recorder, logging insulin doses, drone routes, fuel levels, and names of missing pets, because details preserve dignity during chaos. By afternoon, state rescue crews were still hours away, slowed by landslides farther south, blocked bridges, and the same weather grinding Bellweather raw. So the town stopped waiting to be rescued as a single dramatic event and started treating rescue like 1,000 precise tasks. Someone filled every bathtub before the pressure dropped. Someone labeled coolers with medication names in waterproof marker. Someone checked which elders used hearing aids before handing out alert instructions. These were not glamorous acts, yet they built the invisible floor under survival, the stable habits that keep panic from consuming oxygen and judgment. As evening folded over the valley, Nia climbed the hill again and saw the hazard lights reflected in puddles like a chain of fire. The helicopter pilot radioed that he could not trust the ridgeline through fog, but he could see Bellweather's blinking code punching upward. Nia ran downhill, grabbed spare flares from a road crew shed, and planted them along the highest gravel shoulder with two orchard workers. The red flare line, the mirrored van lights, and the drone markers finally stitched a corridor through weather that had looked impossible all day. The first helicopter emerged from cloud like a hard-earned thought, wobbling, correcting, then settling toward the clinic coordinates with fuel to spare. Inside Bellweather, people who had spent years passing each other wordlessly in checkout lines suddenly knew one another by usefulness, not labels. The kid with the gaming tools became the signal expert. The fishermen became engineers. The laundromat owner became air traffic control, wrapped in a raincoat. When Elena and the smallest generator were lifted out first, the town did not cheer wildly because exhaustion had made joy quieter and deeper. They simply watched the aircraft rise past the blinking hill, and many understood they were no longer the same collection of people. Through the night, more runs followed, carrying patients, medicine, blankets, and one terrified beagle tucked inside a laundry hamper lined with towels. By dawn, professional crews finally rolled in from the north, staring at hand-drawn maps, drone logs, and supply tables built by a town they expected to find helpless. The mudslide had buried a road, but it also exposed a hidden inventory of skills that had been sitting in plain sight for years. Machines once dismissed as noisy appliances became battery banks, belt stock, shelter storage, signal support, and reflected guidance when the valley needed all of it. Bellweather's victory was not magic, and that is exactly why it matters, because most breakthroughs begin with what is already near your hands. Start by listing assets before listing fears, because panic shrinks imagination while inventory expands options you can act on immediately. Match people to specific tasks, not vague goodwill, because clear jobs turn nervous energy into momentum and reveal strengths nobody knew to ask for. Build visible signals in confusion, whether that means maps, checklists, labels, or lights, because people move better when uncertainty has edges. Treat overlooked tools with respect, because resilience often arrives disguised as ordinary equipment, old knowledge, and the stubborn willingness to improvise together. Bellweather did not conquer the storm by becoming fearless. It survived because enough people became useful before they felt ready.